Let me ask you something. Have you ever finished watching a long English video and felt proud because you understood almost everything? Maybe you understood the story, the vocabulary, and even some difficult expressions. You felt confident while listening. But then someone asked you a simple question in English, and suddenly your mind became completely blank. If that has ever happened to you, then today's conversation might be exactly what you need.
I know that feeling very well. In fact, I experienced it again just a few days ago. I was watching an English podcast during breakfast and I understood almost everything. I felt great. I thought my English was finally improving. But later that day, someone asked me a very simple question in English. It wasn't a difficult question. It wasn't complicated. But somehow, I couldn't answer naturally.
What happened?
At first, I understood the question perfectly. I knew what the person was asking. I even knew several possible answers. But while I was trying to choose the perfect words, I became nervous. Then I started thinking about grammar. Then I worried about pronunciation. After that, everything became more difficult. What should have been a simple conversation suddenly felt like an exam.
That's a perfect description of what millions of English learners experience every day. And the strange thing is that many learners believe their problem is vocabulary. They think they need to memorize another 1,000 words. Others believe they need more grammar lessons. Some spend years searching for a secret method, but after helping many learners, I've noticed something interesting.
What is it?
Most learners already know enough English to start speaking. Their biggest problem isn't knowledge. Their biggest problem is fear. Fear of making mistakes, fear of sounding foolish, fear of speaking too slowly, fear of being judged by other people.
That sounds very familiar. Whenever I speak English, I feel pressure. I want every sentence to be correct. I want my pronunciation to sound natural. I don't want people to notice my mistakes. Because of that, I often stay silent instead of speaking.
And that's exactly where progress stops. Let me ask you another question. When children learn their first language, do they speak perfectly?
Of course not. Children make mistakes all the time.
Exactly. They make mistakes every day. Sometimes they use the wrong word. Sometimes they pronounce things incorrectly. Sometimes their sentences don't make sense. But they continue speaking. They continue practicing. They don't wait until they're perfect. They learn through communication.
That's interesting because adults usually do the opposite. We wait until we feel ready. We wait until we know enough vocabulary. We wait until our grammar improves. We wait until our pronunciation becomes better.
And unfortunately, many people spend years waiting. They keep preparing, they keep studying, but they don't actually speak. Then one day, they realize they've spent hundreds of hours learning English without becoming comfortable in real conversations.
I think many people listening right now can relate to that. Sometimes I feel like I've spent more time preparing to speak English than actually speaking English.
And that's why today's conversation is important. Today, we're going to explore the real reasons people struggle with speaking. We're also going to practice useful English naturally through conversation. Most importantly, we're going to discover how small daily habits can completely change your confidence.
I'm ready. Because honestly, I'm tired of feeling nervous every time I speak English.
Good. Let's begin with something simple. Tell me about your morning today. Don't worry about making mistakes. Just tell the story naturally.
All right, this morning I wake up at 7 o'clock. After that, I brush my teeth and drink some coffee. Then I check my phone and read a few messages.
Very good. But I noticed something important. You said, I wake up at 7 o'clock. Did this happen today, or does it happen every day?
It happened today.
Then we need past tense. Try again.
Okay. This morning I woke up at 7 o'clock. After that, I brushed my teeth and drank some coffee. Then I checked my phone and read a few messages.
Excellent. That sounds much more natural. One of the most common speaking mistakes is forgetting to change the tense. When you're describing something that already happened, remember to use past tense verbs.
I think I make that mistake often because I'm trying to think too quickly.
That's completely normal. In fact, speaking quickly is not the goal. Speaking clearly is the goal. Many learners rush because they're afraid of silence, but silence isn't your enemy. Sometimes taking a few seconds to think can actually make your English sound more natural.
That's good to hear because I often feel embarrassed when I need extra time to think.
Never be embarrassed about thinking. Native speakers pause too. The difference is that they don't panic when they pause. They simply take a moment, organize their thoughts, and continue speaking.
That changes the way I see conversations. Maybe I don't need to speak faster. Maybe I need to become more comfortable speaking at my own pace.
Exactly. And that's an important lesson for everyone listening right now. Fluency isn't speaking fast. Fluency is expressing your ideas comfortably and clearly. Let me ask you something else. Imagine you're alone in your room, nobody is watching you, nobody is judging you. You decide to practice English for 10 minutes. How do you feel in that situation?
Honestly, I feel much more relaxed. When I'm alone, I don't worry too much about mistakes. Sometimes I even talk to myself while I'm cooking, cleaning the house, or taking a walk. In those moments, English feels easier. The words seem to come naturally.
That's very interesting. So, when you're alone, you can speak. But when another person appears, speaking suddenly becomes difficult. Doesn't that suggest that English isn't the real problem?
I suppose you're right. If English were truly the problem, I wouldn't be able to speak even when I'm alone. But somehow, being around other people changes everything.
Exactly. And that's something many learners never realize. The biggest challenge is often psychological, not linguistic. In other words, the problem isn't always the language itself. The problem is how we feel when using the language.
That makes a lot of sense. Sometimes, when someone starts speaking English to me, I immediately begin worrying about whether my answer will be correct. Instead of listening carefully, I'm already thinking about my response.
And that's where many conversations start falling apart. Imagine trying to drive a car while constantly looking in the rearview mirror. It would be difficult, wouldn't it?
Very difficult. You would probably miss important things happening in front of you.
Exactly. And that's what happens when learners become obsessed with mistakes. Instead of focusing on communication, they focus on self criticism. Instead of listening to the conversation, they listen to their fears.
I've never thought about it that way before. Sometimes I spend so much energy worrying about mistakes that I forget to enjoy the conversation itself.
That's a very important observation. Language exists for communication. The purpose of speaking is not to prove that your grammar is perfect. The purpose is to share ideas, tell stories, ask questions, and connect with people.
So you're saying communication should come before perfection?
Absolutely. Think about the most interesting conversations you've ever had. Were they memorable because every sentence was grammatically perfect?
No, not at all. They were memorable because the ideas were interesting and the people were engaging.
Exactly. People remember how a conversation made them feel. They don't spend the entire conversation analyzing every grammar rule you use.
That's actually reassuring. Sometimes I imagine everyone is paying close attention to my mistakes.
Most people aren't. In fact, most people are thinking about themselves. They're focused on their own words, their own ideas, and their own concerns. They're not secretly acting as grammar teachers.
That thought alone makes speaking feel less intimidating.
Good. Now, let's talk about another common problem. Have you ever translated every sentence from your native language into English before speaking?
All the time. It's probably one of my biggest habits. I think of a sentence in my native language first, then I try to translate it into English.
And how does that process feel?
Slow, very slow. Sometimes, by the time I finish translating, the conversation has already moved on.
Exactly. Translation can be useful when learning new vocabulary, but it becomes a problem when speaking. Imagine trying to have a conversation while using a dictionary for every sentence. It would be exhausting.
That's exactly how it feels sometimes. My brain becomes tired after only a few minutes.
That's because you're doing two jobs at the same time. First, you're creating a sentence in one language, then you're converting it into another language. That process requires a lot of mental energy.
So, how can I stop translating?
You don't stop overnight. Instead, you gradually build the habit of thinking directly in English. Start with simple observations. Look around your room and describe what you see using very basic English.
Can you give me an example?
Of course. Imagine you're sitting in your room right now. Instead of thinking in your native language, simply say, "There is a desk in front of me. My laptop is on the desk. The room is quiet. I have a cup of coffee next to me."
That seems simple enough.
Exactly. Simplicity is powerful. Many learners think they need advanced vocabulary to become fluent. But fluency often begins with simple observations repeated consistently.
I think I understand. Instead of trying to create complicated sentences, I should focus on expressing simple ideas naturally.
That's right. Let's try another exercise. Imagine you're walking through a city. What could you say in English without translating?
Maybe something like, "The weather is nice today. There are many people on the street. I can hear traffic. The shops are busy."
Excellent. That's exactly the kind of practice that develops natural thinking. You're not translating. You're simply describing reality as you experience it.
The more we talk about this, the more I realize that fluency might be simpler than I thought.
It is simpler. But simple doesn't always mean easy. The challenge is consistency. Most learners practice for a few days, then stop. Real progress comes from repeating small habits every day.
That reminds me of physical exercise. Going to the gym once doesn't change your body, but exercising consistently over time does.
That's a perfect comparison. Language learning works the same way. One conversation won't make you fluent. One lesson won't transform your speaking. But daily practice creates remarkable results over time.
I wish more learners understood that. Many people expect dramatic improvements after only a few weeks.
Exactly. And when progress feels slow, they become discouraged. But here's something important to remember. Progress is often invisible at first. Just because you can't see improvement immediately doesn't mean improvement isn't happening.
That's encouraging. Sometimes I forget how much I've already learned because I'm focused on how much I still don't know.
And that's another trap. If you only focus on what you don't know, you'll never feel successful. Instead, occasionally look back and notice how far you've come.
When I think about it, there was a time when I couldn't understand English videos at all. Now I can follow entire conversations. That's definitely progress.
Exactly. Celebrate those victories. Every new word you learn, every conversation you understand, every sentence you successfully speak is evidence that you're moving forward.
I think many people listening right now need to hear that.
I agree. Learning English isn't about becoming perfect overnight. It's about becoming slightly better every day. Small improvements may seem insignificant, but over months and years, they create extraordinary results.
And perhaps that's the real secret. Not perfect.
Exactly. Consistent effort beats perfection every single time. Let's do something practical now. Many English learners spend hours studying grammar rules, but when someone asks them a simple question about their day, they struggle to answer naturally. So, let's practice a real conversation. Imagine someone asks you a very simple question. What did you do this morning? How would you answer?
That's actually harder than it sounds. Even though I know the vocabulary, I sometimes get confused about which tense to use. I start speaking, then I stop, then I try to correct myself.
That's completely normal. The important thing is not avoiding mistakes. The important thing is noticing them and learning from them. So tell me about your morning. Don't worry if you make mistakes.
All right. This morning I wake up around 7 o'clock. Then I brush my teeth and drink a cup of coffee. After that, I check my phone and read some messages before starting work.
Very good. That's exactly the kind of answer many learners would give. Now, let's improve it together. Since these actions already happened, we need past tense verbs. Can you try again?
Okay. This morning I woke up around 7 o'clock. Then I brushed my teeth and drank a cup of coffee. After that, I checked my phone and read some messages before starting work.
Excellent. That sounds much more natural. Let's look at those verbs again because they're extremely common in everyday English. Wake becomes woke, brush becomes brushed, drink becomes drank, check becomes checked. These are words you'll use constantly in real conversations.
I think I understand the rule when someone explains it. The problem happens when I need to speak quickly. My brain doesn't always remember the correct form.
That's because speaking is different from studying. When you study, you have time to think. When you speak, your brain needs to produce language instantly. That's why repetition is so important.
So instead of only reading grammar rules, I should repeatedly use them in conversation?
Exactly. Let me ask you another question. After you finished breakfast, what happened next?
After breakfast, I got ready for work. I organized my desk, prepared my schedule, and started answering emails.
Very good. Notice how naturally that sounded. You didn't need complicated vocabulary. You simply described real events from your life. That's one of the fastest ways to improve speaking.
I think many learners underestimate simple conversations. They're always searching for advanced vocabulary when they haven't mastered everyday English yet.
That's a very important point. Imagine two learners. One knows 10,000 words but rarely speaks. The other knows only 2,000 words but uses them every day. Which learner do you think will sound more fluent?
Probably the second learner because they're comfortable using the language.
Exactly. Fluency isn't only about knowledge, it's about access. It's about being able to use the words you already know when you need them.
That explains something I've noticed. Sometimes I recognize a word instantly while reading, but I can't remember it when I'm speaking.
And that's because passive vocabulary and active vocabulary are different. Passive vocabulary is what you understand. Active vocabulary is what you can actually use in conversation.
So, if I want to become a better speaker, I need to turn passive vocabulary into active vocabulary.
Exactly. And one of the best ways to do that is by talking about your daily life. Let's continue. What did you do after work today?
After work, I went for a short walk. The weather was nice, so I decided to spend some time outside. Then I came home and prepared dinner.
Excellent. Notice how natural that sounds. You're not telling an imaginary story. You're talking about real experiences. Real experiences are easier to remember and easier to describe.
That's true. When I talk about my own life, I don't need to invent ideas. I already know what happened.
Exactly. That's why I often encourage learners to keep a simple English diary. Every evening, write a few sentences about your day, then read them aloud the next morning.
That sounds useful because it combines writing, reading, and speaking practice.
Exactly. And the topics never run out because your life creates new material every day. One day you can talk about work. Another day you can talk about a movie you watched. Another day you can describe a conversation with a friend.
I like that idea because it feels practical. Sometimes textbooks feel disconnected from real life.
That's another important lesson. Language becomes memorable when it's connected to real experiences. If you learn a phrase today and immediately use it in your own life, you're much more likely to remember it.
That explains why some vocabulary disappears from my memory. I learn it once, but I never use it again.
Exactly. Unused knowledge fades, used knowledge grows stronger. That's true for languages, music, sports, and almost every skill.
I think many people listening right now have experienced that. They memorize a list of words for a test, but a month later they can't remember most of them.
Because memorization alone isn't enough. The brain remembers information that it considers useful. When you repeatedly use a word in real situations, your brain receives a message that the word is important.
So the goal isn't just learning vocabulary, the goal is creating experiences with vocabulary.
Exactly. Let's try something else. Imagine you're telling a friend about your entire morning. Don't worry about perfection, just tell the story naturally.
This morning I woke up a little earlier than usual because I wanted to start my day calmly. After waking up, I made my bed and opened the window. The weather was pleasant and the fresh air helped me feel more awake. Then I brushed my teeth, took a shower, and prepared breakfast. While eating breakfast, I listened to an English podcast. I didn't understand every single word, but I understood the main ideas. After that, I checked my emails, reviewed my schedule, and started working.
That was excellent. Did you notice something interesting?
What do you mean?
You just spoke for almost a full minute in English about a very ordinary topic. No complicated vocabulary, no advanced grammar, just clear communication.
You're right. If someone had asked me to do that a year ago, I would have felt much more nervous.
And that's proof of progress. Many learners don't recognize their own improvement because they compare themselves to fluent speakers instead of comparing themselves to their past selves.
That's true. When I compare myself to native speakers, I feel discouraged. But when I compare myself to the person I was a year ago, I can clearly see improvement.
And that's the comparison that matters. The goal isn't to become someone else. The goal is to become a better version of yourself.
I think that's an important message, not only for language learning, but for life in general.
Absolutely. Progress is personal. Every learner moves at a different speed. Some improve quickly, others improve slowly. But anyone who practices consistently can improve.
And perhaps that's why daily routines are so powerful. They may seem small, but they create long-term results.
Exactly. A few minutes of English every day may not seem significant, but after a year, those minutes become hours. Those hours become experience, and that experience becomes confidence.
I love that idea. Confidence isn't something that appears magically. It's something you build through repeated action.
Exactly. Every sentence you speak is another step forward. Every mistake teaches you something. Every conversation makes you stronger. That's how fluency is built, one day at a time. I want to tell you a story. It's a story that many English learners can relate to, even if the details are different. A few years ago, I met someone who had been studying English for a very long time. This person watched English videos every day, listened to podcasts during work, and spent hours learning vocabulary. On paper, it looked like they were doing everything right.
That sounds like a lot of learners I know. They spend years studying but still don't feel comfortable speaking.
Exactly. And one day, something unexpected happened. While walking through the city, this person met a tourist who needed help. The tourist looked confused and was trying to find a famous location nearby.
I can already guess what happened.
The tourist walked over and asked a very simple question. "Excuse me, could you help me find this place?"
And even though the learner understood the question, they couldn't answer.
Exactly! They understood every word. They knew the answer. They even knew the direction. But in that moment, their confidence disappeared. Their heart started beating faster. Their hands became slightly nervous. Their minds suddenly felt empty.
I've experienced something very similar. It's a strange feeling because you know the information, but you can't access it when you need it most.
Exactly. And after the tourist left, the learner felt disappointed, not because they didn't know English, but because they realized they had allowed fear to control the situation.
That's the painful part. It's not the mistake that hurts. It's knowing that fear stopped you from trying.
Exactly. Many learners think confidence comes first and speaking comes later. But the truth is usually the opposite. Confidence often comes after action.
Meaning that we become confident by speaking, not before speaking.
Exactly. Imagine someone who wants to learn how to swim. Would they become confident before entering the water?
Probably not. They would need experience in the water before feeling confident.
And language learning works the same way. Many people wait for confidence before speaking. Unfortunately, confidence is usually the result of speaking, not the cause of it.
That's a powerful idea. I think many learners are waiting for a feeling that only comes through practice.
Exactly. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever used the phrase, I'm boring?
Yes, actually. I used it once when I wanted to say that I felt bored.
And that's one of the most common mistakes among English learners. Let's talk about it because it teaches an important lesson.
I'd love to understand the difference more clearly.
If you say, I'm bored, it means you feel uninterested. Maybe you're sitting at home with nothing to do. Maybe you're waiting in a long line. Maybe you're listening to something that doesn't interest you.
So, I'm bored describes my feeling.
Exactly. Now, if you say, I'm boring, you're saying something completely different. You're saying that you cause other people to feel bored.
So, if I say I'm boring, I'm describing myself as an uninteresting person.
Exactly. That's why context matters so much in English. A small change can completely change the meaning.
I think that's one reason people become nervous. They're afraid that one small mistake might create confusion.
That's true. But here's something important to remember. Even when you make mistakes, communication often continues. Most people understand what you're trying to say because they listen to the overall context.
That's reassuring because sometimes I imagine every mistake is a disaster.
Most mistakes are much smaller than learners imagine. Think about conversations in your native language. People misspeak all the time. They choose the wrong word. They forget a name. They start a sentence and then change direction halfway through.
That's true. Communication is rarely perfect, even in our strongest language.
Exactly. That's why chasing perfection can become a trap. The more you focus on perfection, the less energy you have for communication.
I think many people listening right now are trapped in that cycle. They want every sentence to be perfect, so they hesitate before speaking.
And hesitation creates another problem. The longer you wait, the more pressure you feel. The more pressure you feel, the harder speaking becomes.
It's almost like a loop. Fear creates silence, and silence creates more fear.
Exactly. That's why action is so important. Even small actions matter. A short conversation, a simple question, a basic answer. These small experiences slowly train your brain to become comfortable.
That reminds me of something that happened recently. I was in a cafe, and I heard two tourists speaking English. Normally, I would avoid interacting with them, but this time I decided to ask a simple question.
What happened?
At first, I felt nervous. I could hear my heart beating faster. I worried about pronunciation. I worried about grammar. But after the first few sentences, something changed. The conversation became easier.
That's exactly what happens. The first minute is often the hardest part. Once your brain realizes that you're safe, it begins to relax.
And the interesting thing is that the tourists were very friendly. They weren't judging me at all. In fact, they seemed happy that I was trying to communicate.
That's another lesson many learners discover. Most people appreciate effort. They're not expecting perfection. They're usually grateful when someone makes an effort to speak their language.
Looking back, I think the fear existed mostly inside my own mind.
Exactly. Sometimes the biggest obstacle isn't the conversation itself. It's the story we tell ourselves before the conversation even begins.
That's a powerful statement. The story we tell ourselves.
Think about it. Before speaking, many learners tell themselves things like, my English isn't good enough. I'm going to make mistakes. People will laugh at me. I should stay quiet.
And when you repeat those thoughts often enough, they begin to feel true.
Exactly. But imagine replacing those thoughts with something different. Imagine saying, I'm still learning. Mistakes help me improve. Every conversation is practice. I don't need to be perfect.
That mindset feels much healthier.
And much more productive. Because confidence isn't built through positive thinking alone. Confidence is built when positive thinking is combined with action.
So the goal isn't pretending to be fearless. The goal is acting even when fear exists.
Exactly. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is moving forward despite fear.
I think that's a lesson that applies to every area of life, not just language learning.
Absolutely. Growth often begins at the edge of discomfort. Every time you choose to speak English despite feeling nervous, you're teaching yourself something important.
And what is that?
You're teaching yourself that mistakes are survivable. You're teaching yourself that conversations don't need to be perfect. You're teaching yourself that communication matters more than perfection.
The more we talk about this, the more I realize that fluency isn't only a language skill, it's also a confidence skill.
That's exactly right. Language learning is partly about vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation, but it's also about confidence, patience, persistence, and self-belief.
And perhaps that's why some learners improve quickly, while others struggle for years. It's not always about intelligence. Sometimes it's about mindset.
Exactly. The learners who improve the fastest are often the ones who accept mistakes as part of the journey. They don't see mistakes as proof of failure, they see mistakes as proof of progress.
I love that idea. Mistakes aren't evidence that you're failing, they're evidence that you're trying.
Exactly. And every person listening right now should remember that. If you've ever felt nervous speaking English, you're not alone. If you've ever frozen during a conversation, you're not alone. If you've ever made mistakes and felt embarrassed, you're definitely not alone.
Because every fluent speaker was once a beginner, too.
Exactly. Every confident speaker started somewhere. Every fluent speaker made mistakes. Every successful learner experienced moments of doubt. The difference is that they kept going.
And perhaps that's the message everyone needs to hear today. Don't wait until you're perfect. Start with the English you already know.
Exactly. Speak with what you have. Learn from every conversation. Trust the process. And remember that confidence grows one sentence at a time. Now that we've talked about confidence, fear, mistakes, and daily practice, let's move into something practical. One of the biggest reasons learners struggle in real conversations is that they don't get enough exposure to common situations. They study English for years, but they rarely practice the kinds of conversations that happen in everyday life.
I think that's true. Many learners know grammar rules, but when they enter a restaurant, answer a phone call, or go shopping, they suddenly don't know what to say.
Exactly. That's why we're going to practice several real-life situations today. As you listen, imagine yourself inside the conversation. Don't just listen passively. Try answering in your mind before you hear the response.
That sounds like a great exercise because it forces the brain to participate instead of simply observing.
Exactly. Let's begin with one of the most common situations in the world, ordering food at a restaurant.
A situation that many English learners find stressful when traveling.
Imagine you walk into a restaurant. The server approaches your table and asks, "Hello, what would you like to order today?" What would you say?
I would probably say, I'd like a grilled chicken sandwich and a bottle of water, please.
Excellent. The server then asks, "Would you like anything else?"
I might respond, no, thank you. That's all for now.
Very natural. Now imagine the food arrives. You taste it and realize it's excellent. The server returns and asks, "How is everything?"
I could say, everything is great. Thank you. The food is delicious.
Perfect. Notice that none of those sentences are complicated. Real conversations often rely on simple language used confidently.
That's something many learners forget. They think fluency means using difficult vocabulary, but native speakers often communicate using simple words.
Exactly. Communication is about clarity, not complexity.
I think that idea alone can reduce a lot of pressure.
Let's move to another situation. Imagine your phone rings and a friend calls you.
Okay, what happens next?
Your friend says, "Hi, are you free this weekend?"
I might answer, I'm not sure yet. What are you planning?
Your friend replies, "I'm thinking about going to a new cafe and practicing English together."
That sounds interesting. I could say, I'd love to join you. What time are you thinking?
Excellent! Your friend suggests Saturday afternoon.
Then I might answer, Saturday afternoon works perfectly for me.
Again, very simple English. But this is exactly how real conversations happen.
And the more I listen to these examples, the more I realize that everyday English is often much simpler than learners expect.
That's because real communication focuses on understanding, not impressing people.
That's a valuable lesson.
Now let's imagine another situation. You're shopping for clothes in a store.
A situation that many travelers experience.
A store employee approaches and asks, "Can I help you find something?"
I could respond, yes, I'm looking for a shirt.
The employee asks, "What size do you need?"
I would answer, I usually wear a medium.
The employee shows you a shirt and asks, "Would you like to try it on?"
I could say, yes, I'd like to try it on. Thank you.
Excellent. Once again, these are simple phrases that can be extremely useful in real life.
I notice a pattern. The most useful English is often the simplest English.
Exactly. Simplicity creates confidence. Confidence creates communication. Communication creates fluency.
That's a powerful chain of events.
Now, let's learn a few important words that can help you describe your English journey more naturally.
I'm ready.
The first word is confident. If you're confident, you believe in your ability to do something successfully.
So I could say, I'm becoming more confident when I speak English.
For example, my listening skills have improved a lot this year.
For example, my listening skills have improved a lot this year.
Excellent. The next word is fluent.
Many learners dream of becoming fluent in English.
Exactly. Fluency doesn't mean perfection. It means being able to communicate naturally and comfortably.
I think that's an important distinction.
The next word is nervous.
That's a word many English learners understand personally.
Very true. You could say, "I feel nervous when speaking with strangers."
But hopefully less nervous than before.
Exactly. The next word is progress.
I could say, I'm making progress every week because I practice consistently,
Excellent. The next phrase is take your time.
meaning that I don't need to rush.
Exactly. If someone says, "Take your time," they're telling you to relax and proceed at a comfortable pace.
I think many learners need to hear that more often.
I agree. Learning a language is a marathon, not a sprint.
And what about mistakes?
That's actually the final word. Mistakes.
a word that many learners fear.
Exactly. But mistakes are not enemies. Mistakes are teachers. Every mistake shows you what needs more practice.
That's a much healthier way to think about learning.
Now, before we finish, let's review the most important lessons from today's conversation.
We've covered a lot of ground,
First, understanding English and speaking English are different skills.
which means understanding isn't enough. We must also practice speaking,
Second, fear often causes more problems than grammar.
because fear prevents action,
Third, confidence comes from speaking, not before speaking.
meaning we build confidence through experience.
Fourth, thinking directly in English is often more effective than translating every sentence.
Because translation slows down communication.
Fifth, simple English can be extremely powerful.
And simple communication is often more useful than complicated communication.
Exactly. Now let me ask you a question.
A question for everyone listening?
Yes, I want everyone listening to think carefully about their answer. What is the biggest thing stopping you from speaking English confidently? Is it fear? Is it vocabulary? Is it pronunciation? Or is it something else?
Take a moment and think about your answer.
Then write your answer in the comments below. Reading other learners' experiences can help everyone realize they're not alone on this journey.
And if this conversation helped you today, don't keep it to yourself.
Please take a second to like this video because it helps more English learners discover the channel.
And if you're serious about improving your English listening and speaking skills, subscribe to English Mind Journey.
We're building a community of learners who understand that progress doesn't come from perfection.
It comes from practice.
It comes from patience.
It comes from consistency.
And most importantly, it comes from believing that improvement is possible.
Because every fluent speaker was once a beginner.
Keep practicing.
Keep improving.
Keep speaking.